Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session, this video. And in this class, we are going to talk about the direct method. Today is November 20th, 2021, and I am teacher Ester. So, what is the direct method? In previous classes, we learned about the grammar translation method. And the direct method is developed because the grammar translation method was not successful. It is said that it was not effective when teaching a second language. So that's why the direct method became very popular in the 19th century. So teachers left or decided to stop using the grammar translation method and started using the direct method. So these are some characteristics of the direct method. The basic rule is no translation is allowed. So this is one of the main characteristics of this method. Not like the grammar translation method. In this method, you are not allowed to translate. Students are not allowed to translate, and we as teachers should not teach students to translate. Also, meaning is conveyed directly in the target language using visual aids. So you as teachers should ask, so if I cannot teach my students to translate, how will they learn the language? So it's very easy and very simple. Meaning, as it says here, meaning is conveyed directly in the target language by using visual aids. So this is very important because if you use visual aids, you will have a support system for students to get the meaning of what you are saying. It says here, teachers do a lot of demonstration with realia. Let's remember realia are the real objects, like this is a cell phone, this is real, not using an animated picture, right? That's realia. Also, you can use pictures if you don't have access to all the things, or you can do pantomime, and it's very fun. Then students speak in the target language and in real life situations. This is very important because if we want students to communicate their feelings, we need to teach them to communicate in real life situations. Also, the syllabus is based upon situations like at the bank, at the doctor, at the grocery shopping. So these are situations that you can use when teaching in this method, the direct method. Or situations like teaching geography, teaching a vocabulary about money, about the time. So this is very important because this is what students are going to use when they go out of your classroom. When they leave your classroom, they will find the real world. So this is important that in the classroom, they have a control practice, and then they are freer and they are more fluent to speak when outside. And it says also here, grammar is taught inductively. Let's remember what is the inductive way. It's when from specific to general. So in this case, you will introduce grammar by first giving them examples, sentences examples, and they can infer from the examples the rule. Like, what is the rule? You can present them, for example, if you are teaching irregular verbs in past, and you know that there are different rules when writing them, so you can show them the examples, and then they can come up with the rule according to the example. So this is more student-centered. And also vocabulary is practiced by using new words in sentences. So you want the students to learn to use the words, not to memorize them from a list. You want them to know how to use them in sentences. So that's why it's very important that you present the vocabulary in sentences or in context, so students know how we can use that word. Very good. So let's go to our next point, which is, what is the goal of the direct method? And it's very easy and very simple. The goal is for students to successfully communicate in the target language. So, if you want that your students can communicate, in this case in English, you have to make the activities engaging so they can communicate. And as we were saying before, come up with activities that are like real life situations so they know how to communicate. Very good. So this is the goal of the direct method, for our students to communicate in the target language, to actually communicate. So when they're, as I was telling you, outside of your classroom and they see an American person, they can come and talk to them. And that is a successful communication. Next, we have what is the teacher's role and student's role. Let's read what it says here. The teacher's role is to direct the class activities, also to encourage students to speak, and last but not least, participate and correct mistakes. So, teachers should encourage students to participate and to speak in the classes. And also teachers should correct students' mistakes because this is very important. Then the student's role is basically to be active in the class. So they just are encouraged to speak and to participate and to interact with their environment. And a very important note here is that both are partners in the learning process. So teachers and students should work hand by hand to have an efficient learning. So it's very important to keep this in mind, teachers. We are partners, okay? Students are not left alone. We are partners in the learning process. Very good. Let's go to our next part, which is the interaction. How is interaction when using this method? Basically, it happens in both ways. First, teacher to students, also students to teacher. In this method, the students feel free because they're encouraged. They feel free to come up to you, the teacher, and ask you questions or communicate to you or talk to you, etc., etc. And also, a lot of student and student interaction happens. Okay, so this is very important because they are practicing conversations, so they need their partner to practice. So this is very important, student and student interaction. Let's go to the next part, which is how is the language and the culture viewed in this method. Language, it's primarily spoken because students speak a lot. Also, vocabulary is emphasized over grammar. You should not just give the grammar and tell them, okay, this is the rule, this is the topic, there you go, speak. No, that's why vocabulary is very important because to speak, you need to know a lot of words, how to say this in English, etc., etc. So that's why vocabulary is emphasized. Though we are not saying that you should not teach grammar, no, because grammar is also very important. So just as I was mentioning before, teach grammar, but in an inductive way, not deductive, inductive. Also, in this method, teacher works on the 4 skills. Let's remember the 4 skills: speaking, listening, writing, and reading. So, teacher works on the 4 skills. Is very important that you work on the 4 skills, but everything will always have speaking focus, speaking tasks. And as we have on the last part here, pronunciation is very important, okay? Be very careful when you are teaching. And especially if it's vocabulary, try to see or learn before what is the pronunciation of the words, because we don't want to teach something wrong to students. Because if you teach a word that is not pronounced very well, they will keep repeating the same process, and we don't want that, right? Also, culture. Culture is used to study the history of the people who speak the language. In our case, because we teach English, so we're going to study the culture, the history of the United States, which is very important because then by studying culture, you get then a lot of aspects, why people say this, why people talk to this, why is it an informal word, why is it a formal word, etc., etc. Then we have, it is important also because you students study the geography of the country and about their daily lives, right? Because this is very important for the real life situations. We need to know how is a normal life of a person who speaks English, because we don't know. So culture is very important that you include it in your English classes. Then we have the evaluation. How is evaluation accomplished in the direct method? So there is not a specific rule on how to do an evaluation using this method, but because students speak a lot, maybe this can be your evaluations when they are having a speaking or a written task. You can evaluate them because they are actually using the language, okay? Remember that this is our main focus. We want the students to use the language, right? So this can be your evaluation. You can do interviews or oral exams. So you can evaluate how students use the language. And written tasks, you can ask them to write a paragraph, an essay, a letter. It depends on the topic you are learning at the time. Next, we have some principles of the direct method. Number one, it's very important that students read in the target language, okay? There are a lot of books, a lot of histories, fairy tales, short stories that you can use, and students will learn more vocabulary through reading. Culture consists on fine arts, such as geography, music, etc., etc. So you should include this into your classroom. Also use objects present in the environment, it means in the classroom, to help students understand the meaning. As I was telling you, if I want to teach my students what a cell phone is, so I can use my cell phone as an example, okay, students? This is a cell phone, and students will understand the meaning of what a cell phone is because you are using a real object. Then, of course, as we mentioned in the beginning, the native language is not used. Try to avoid using Spanish in your classes because this becomes like a barrier or an obstacle for students to learn English. Also, the teacher should demonstrate, not explain or translate. So you need to demonstrate, okay? As I was telling you, this is a cell phone. Not instead of explaining what is a cell phone, or a cell phone is this device that has numbers and you can call, no, demonstrate. Or it says also here, not translate. Instead of saying, este es un teléfono, no, demonstrate. Students should learn to think in the target language. This is very important because usually when people are learning a second language, they're taught to think first in their native language and they say it in English. And it becomes a barrier because then they are not fluent in their second language. So let's teach students to think in the target language. Also, vocabulary is acquired more naturally if students use it in full sentences. As I was telling you, it's better to teach them vocabulary and you giving them sentences instead of just a list to memorize, because students are just learning to memorize and not how to use it. It's very important that students learn to self-correct, that if they have a mistake, they are conscious, they can become conscious about it, and they can correct their own mistakes. As teachers, we should provide opportunities to communicate in real life situations. This is very important because if we want students to use the language, they should know when to use it, why, how, with who, where. So real life situations, okay? Like an appointment with a doctor, or introducing your family to a friend, or when you are at the bank, etc., etc. And grading is important, okay? Grading is very important because you also become fluent and you learn to use the language when you are grading something, a paragraph, a sentence, an essay, a letter, an email. That's why grading is very important. Let's continue with the techniques. These are techniques that you can use when using the direct method. If you're interested in using the direct method, these are some techniques that you can use. Number one, reading aloud. So you can hear how they read and they can correct their mistakes. Also, question and answer exercise. This is very good because students also need to learn how to ask. So you can give them a question and they can answer it, or they can write their questions and answer them with a partner. Very good exercise. Then getting students to self-correct, as we were saying before, it's very important. So they become conscious about their errors, about their mistakes, and they can correct them. Not only in the classroom, but when they are talking with other people. Conversation practice also is important because students need to learn to communicate. So conversations are important. Another exercise that you can give them is fill in the blanks. We discussed it before in the grammar translation method, and this exercise helps them to learn the grammar inductively. Then we have the dictation. You can dictate students a paragraph or a story, and students need to write it. And you can vary this activity because you can read it 3 times, and the 3 times you change the speed of your lecturing. And so students write down what they understand, and then you check. Also, as number 7, we have map drawing. This is good if you're teaching culture. You basically give students sentences and they draw them in a map, and this is very good because students learn to connect culture with the language. And last but not least, we have paragraph writing. So you can tell them to write a paragraph about any topic. Maybe it can be something about what you learn in the class or something extra, an extra topic. And students, as I was telling you, become fluent also when writing. So very good. This is what the direct method is about. If you're interested on using it in your classroom, now you have, I think, a bigger and more expanded idea on what it is about. I think it is a good method that we can use, of course. There are advantages and disadvantages. There are pros and cons, but take the best, take the good part of this method, which is teaching students to communicate, to successfully communicate. So thank you so much for paying attention. And this was my class about the direct method. I hope you enjoy it. Bye-bye.